The Zrak coalition thought they were clever. In their minds, humans were nothing but stubborn newcomers to the galactic stage, loud, proud, and easily frightened. So when a group of human children visited the neutral world of Meridia for a school trip, the Zrak saw an opportunity. "Capture the young," said Commander Gloth of the Zrak. "Then the humans will kneel. They will beg." It all happened fast. The children, laughing and playing under the twin suns of Meridia, were suddenly surrounded by armored Zrak soldiers. Within minutes, the children were loaded onto transports and taken to a remote Zrak-controlled station orbiting a dead moon. The Zrak believed they had achieved a great victory. They called for a grand meeting at the space station. Banners were hung. News of their success was broadcast across nearby systems. They expected applause, admiration, even fear. But what they got instead was silence. An uncomfortable, heavy silence. Alien leaders from other factions gathered at the station, not to congratulate the Zrak, but to understand what had happened. In the front of the hall stood Commander Vexar, a respected elder of the Trinari species, known for his wisdom and experience in galactic warfare. He listened carefully as Gloth boasted. "We have their young," Gloth cried proudly. "Now the humans must come crawling to us." The other aliens shifted uneasily. Commander Vexar's eyes narrowed. His four-fingered hand tightened into a fist at his side. His voice was cold as winter when he finally spoke. "You captured human children. As prisoners?" Gloth grinned. "Yes, they are weak, they are valuable." The room grew colder despite the warm artificial lights. Vexar shook his head slowly, his face filled with something close to pity. "You are insane," he said, his voice a low growl that echoed in the silent hall. "Completely and utterly insane." Gloth frowned, confused. Some Zrak officials chuckled nervously, believing Vexar to be exaggerating. But Vexar was not joking. "You have not brought victory," Vexar continued. "You have signed your death warrant. You have invited something you do not understand." Gloth scoffed. "They will not risk their armies over mere offspring." Vexar's eyes burned with a fierce memory. "They will not send armies," he said grimly. "They will come themselves. Every mother, every father, every warrior. And they will come not with speeches. They will come with fire and steel." Whispers filled the hall. Some aliens began stepping back from the Zrak officials as if being near them might somehow bring doom. A young diplomat from the peaceful Valari species leaned close to Vexar and whispered, "Surely you exaggerate, Commander. Humans are civilized, are they not?" Vexar turned to her slowly. His face, marked with scars of old wars, was dead serious. "Civilized, yes. Merciful, yes. But harm their young." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "And you will see a side of humanity that even they fear." Far away, at the edge of the Meridia system, humanity had already learned of the incident. Earth's high command held no debate. There were no calls for diplomacy, no press conferences, no threats, only a single order was given. Recover the children. Show no mercy to those responsible. And so, silently, without grand speeches, a fleet was dispatched. A fleet built not for intimidation, but for swift and absolute action. The largest human dreadnoughts moved like silent mountains through space, their engines darkened to hide their approach. Sleek black corvettes darted ahead like hunting wolves. Even the civilian ships had armed themselves, answering the ancient human instinct to protect their young at any cost. Back at the station, the Zrak celebrated into the night. They drank, feasted, and danced, unaware that across the cold void of space, death itself was already moving toward them. Commander Vexar left the station quietly. He had seen enough. As he entered his personal ship, he sent a private message to every leader he knew. "The humans will come. Pray you are not standing beside the fools when they do." And somewhere, in a darkened chamber of the human fleet, a captain stared at the holographic image of the station. Her voice was steady as she gave the command. "Mark targets. Prepare for retrieval. Leave no Zrak forces operational." The humans would not negotiate. They would not talk. They would act. And the galaxy, watching from a distance, would soon learn what true, unstoppable fury looked like. The stars around the Meridia system were calm, but something darker was moving through them. The humans were coming, and they were silent. No grand declarations, no flashing lights. Just cold, fast ships cutting through the emptiness of space, like knives. Commander Vexar sat in his ship's command chair, watching the human fleet approach through his monitor. He had seen many wars, many proud species believing they were unbeatable, but this was something different. This was not war fueled by greed or politics. This was a rescue mission powered by pure rage. Inside the Jrak station, Commander Gloth still believed he was victorious. He threw a grand party, inviting leaders from nearby factions to show off his prizes, the human children. He ordered. The kids paraded through the halls like trophies, but even the guests at the party could feel something was wrong. Anxiety filled the air like smoke. The children, scared but brave, marched silently, their little faces set with defiance. They didn't cry. They didn't beg, and that, more than anything, scared the aliens who watched. If their children are this fearless, one alien whispered to another, what are their parents like? Across the system, the human fleet formed up. Hundreds of ships in perfect silence, without a single wasted movement. Each ship had received the same strict orders: prioritize the safety of the children, neutralize any Jrak resistance swiftly, do not engage non-Jrak forces unless attacked. Captain Ellis, commander of the fleet, stood at the center of the main battleship. She wore a simple dark uniform. No medals, no symbols, only a patch over her heart, a small Earth emblem, and the word protector. Are we ready? She asked. All units are locked in, her second-in-command replied. Awaiting your order. Captain Ellis nodded once. Go. At her word, the fleet moved. On the Jrak station, alarms started flashing. Sensors picked up dozens, no, hundreds, of incoming human ships. Commander Gloth laughed at first. Let them. Come, he shouted. We have hostages. They wouldn't dare. But the look on his officers' faces said otherwise. One of them, younger and wiser than the rest, whispered, Commander, the humans are not slowing down. Gloth frowned. They must send a message soon. But there was no message, no warning. The humans didn't speak. They acted. Sleek black corvettes appeared first, cutting through the outer defenses like blades through paper. Gun batteries went dark. Patrol ships vanished without a trace. Jrak communications were jammed instantly, leaving the station isolated and blind. Panic spread fast. Commander Vexar's private ship hovered at a safe distance, his crew silent as they watched the nightmare unfold. Mark my words, he said quietly to his navigator. The humans didn't come to negotiate, they came to finish it. Inside the Jrak command room, chaos reigned. Shields are down. We can't contact reinforcements. Multiple breaches on decks 3 and 5. Commander Gloth shouted orders, but no one listened anymore. The humans had already boarded the station. Teams of soldiers in black armor moved with terrifying precision. They didn't shoot to kill unless they had to. They disarmed, disabled, and locked down entire sections of the station in minutes. One squad located the holding area where the children were kept. The soldiers moved like shadows, silent, fast, unstoppable. Within minutes, the doors to the holding cell were blown open. A young human Marine entered first, dropping to one knee. It's okay, he said gently. We're here to take you home. The children, brave as they were, still hesitated. One of the smallest stepped forward, a little girl no older than 8, and asked, Are you really humans? The Marine smiled beneath his helmet and lifted his visor. The children saw the familiar, kind eyes of a protector. Yes, he said. And you're safe now. The children ran to him without hesitation. Meanwhile, Captain Ellis ordered the next phase of the mission. Destroy all Jrak military installations, she commanded. Disable their fleet. No survivors among combatants. Across the station and nearby, Zrak bases, human forces moved like a storm. Explosions lit up the void of space as weapons platforms were neutralized. Fighter squadrons chased fleeing Zrak ships, giving no mercy. Not a single civilian was harmed. Only the guilty paid the price. Commander Vexar watched in awe. He had seen brutal armies. He had seen cruel invaders. But this was righteous fury. This was protection, sharpened into a weapon no empire could withstand. On the Zrak station, Commander Gloth finally realized the truth. No one was coming to save him. No one would defend him. He tried to escape through a private shuttle, but a human boarding party intercepted him. As the humans dragged him to the central hangar, Gloth shouted in panic, "We surrender! We surrender!" A human officer simply shook his head. "We didn't come for you," he said coldly. "We came for them." He pointed to the children now safely in the arms of the Marines. Commander Gloth's cries were ignored. The human fleet gathered once more, children safe aboard the ships. Without a word, the humans turned and left, leaving behind a burning ruin of what had once been Zrak pride. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The humans hadn't negotiated. They hadn't threatened. They hadn't demanded. They had acted, swiftly, surely, without fear. And everyone realized, when humanity protects its own, nothing in the universe can stop them. The human fleet cut through the darkness of space, moving as one. Inside the ships, the rescued children were being cared for. Doctors checked them gently. Soldiers offered warm food and soft blankets. Some Marines even knelt beside the children, telling them stories and jokes to make them smile again. Captain Ellis stood silently in the observation room of her ship. She watched the stars outside and listened to the soft laughter of the children through the walls. Her heart, usually strong and steady, ached at what had almost been lost. But now came the answer. Humanity's answer. The mission was not complete yet. Across the Meridia system, Zrak bases still stood, threats that could not be ignored. They had supported the kidnapping. They had celebrated it, and humanity had decided there would be consequences. Captain. Ellis called a meeting with her fleet commanders. Her voice was calm but sharp as steel. "We do not destroy for revenge," she said. "We act to make sure no one ever dares to threaten our people again." Every officer in the room nodded in agreement. Orders were given. Coordinates were marked. Targets were locked. And then the second phase began. Across the stars, Zrak bases received sudden alarms. Unknown ships were approaching. Human ships. At first, the Zrak commanders believed it was just a warning. Maybe a few attacks. Maybe a demand for surrender. They were wrong. There were no warnings. There were no demands. The human fleet moved with terrifying purpose. Stealth ships disabled communication towers. Bombers dropped electromagnetic bombs, shutting down power grids without harming civilians. Strike teams landed at military installations, disabling weapons and destroying stockpiles. Every action was clean, fast, and unstoppable. Within hours, every Zrak base in the system was either captured or reduced to empty ruins. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The humans didn't boast. They didn't make public speeches. They didn't show anger. They simply acted, with deadly, perfect precision. Commander Vexar observed everything from his ship. His crew stayed silent, their eyes wide with awe and fear. "I warned them," Vexar said softly, almost to himself. "I warned them what humans would do." One of his officers, younger and curious, asked, "Why are they so different, Commander?" Vexar leaned back in his chair, eyes heavy with old memories. "Because they fight with something stronger than pride or ambition," he said. "They fight with love. Love for their young. Love for their home. And that makes them unstoppable." The young officer nodded slowly, finally understanding. On one of the last standing Zrak bases, Commander Gloth sat inside a small prison cell. His pride had shattered. His empire had fallen. He watched through the small window as human soldiers dismantled what was once his great fortress. There was no cruelty on their faces, no hate, only cold, professional duty. A human officer passed by, pausing to look at Gloth. "You thought you could break us by taking our children," the officer said quietly, "but you only made us stronger." Gloth lowered his head in shame. There was nothing left to say. Meanwhile, on Earth, the news of the children's rescue spread like wildfire. Families wept with joy. Cities celebrated. Songs were written, and monuments were planned to honor the soldiers who had risked everything. The galaxy, too, learned a lesson that day. They learned that humanity was not weak. They learned that kindness was not the same as softness. And they learned that hurting humans, especially their young, was the greatest mistake anyone could make. Captain Ellis sat alone in her quarters after the mission was complete. She looked at a small photograph she carried everywhere, a photo of her own children back home on Earth. She whispered to the photo, "You're safe. All of you are safe." A soft knock came at her door. It was her first officer. "Captain," he said, "the Council of Allied Worlds has requested a meeting. They want to discuss peace." Ellis smiled sadly. "Now they understand," she said. "Now they understand what it means to touch what we love." She stood up, straightened her uniform, and prepared for the next step. Humanity's answer had been delivered, and it had shaken the stars. The smoke over the Meridia system was still fresh. Broken Drac ships floated silently among the stars. Destroyed bases lay abandoned on shattered moons. The humans had finished their mission, but the shockwaves were just beginning to move across the galaxy. Across many planets, alien leaders watched the destruction with wide eyes and fearful hearts. They had known humans were strong. They had heard stories about human courage and stubbornness. But no one had expected this, a silent, unstoppable storm fueled by love and duty. In the Grand Hall of the Council of Allied Species, a meeting was called. The council chamber was packed with ambassadors, generals, and rulers from dozens of worlds. Holograms showed live footage of the destroyed Drac stations, footage of the human fleet moving in perfect silent formation, and footage of smiling human children being carried to safety by soldiers. The room buzzed with whispers. If they can, destroy the Drac so easily. What if we are next? Maybe we should apologize. Immediately. Commander Vexar was among the council. He stood calmly as nervous leaders argued. Finally, the high speaker of the council banged a heavy staff on the floor. "Silence," he commanded. "We must discuss what to do. The humans have made their power clear. We cannot fight them. But maybe we can make peace." The leaders nodded quickly. Meanwhile, aboard the HSS Valor, Captain Ellis received many messages, offers of alliances, apologies, pleas for forgiveness. Her communication officers piled them up one after another. Captain Ellis looked at the long list and sighed. "They didn't care about us before," she said. "They only care now because they fear us." Her first officer, a man named Silva, spoke carefully. "Fear is better than hatred, Captain," he said. "It gives us a chance to build something better." Ellis thought for a moment. He was right. Humans didn't want to rule the galaxy. They didn't want to conquer others. They only wanted respect and safety for their own. If fear led to peace, it was a beginning. Commander Vexar personally sent a message to Captain Ellis. It was simple but powerful. "On behalf of many species, I apologize for the Drac's actions. We offer friendship, trade, and alliance. We recognize humanity's honor and strength." Captain Ellis read the message carefully. Vexar's words were not filled with fear. They were filled with respect. She smiled. Finally, someone understood. The council decided to act fast. Within days, many alien species signed formal friendship treaties with Earth. Trade routes opened. Research stations welcomed human scientists. Cultural exchanges began. Some alien planets even asked for human advisors to help improve their defenses. It was the beginning of a new era, an era where humanity stood not as a lonely new race among the stars, but as a respected and admired power. The Jrak coalition, meanwhile, collapsed completely. With their fleets destroyed and their leaders captured, their planets fell into chaos. Former allies abandoned them. Supplies stopped coming. Their name became a curse word in many languages, a warning never to repeat their mistakes. On Earth, a global day of celebration was declared. Families hugged their children tighter, songs were sung, statues were raised, not of generals or politicians, but of the brave soldiers who rescued the young. Every human heart beat with pride. They had faced darkness, and they had won. Captain Ellis stood at the front of a grand ceremony on Earth. She wore a simple, clean uniform, no medals, no decorations. In her hands, she held a single rose. It was for the children, the symbol of life, love, and hope. As the human anthem played softly in the background, Ellis placed the rose at the foot of a new monument, a giant sculpture of a human child, holding hands with a soldier, looking up at the stars. Tears filled many eyes that day. Not from sadness, but from the knowledge that their world had changed forever. They were no longer weak. They were no longer small. They were family, and their family stretched across the stars. In the weeks that followed, Commander Vexar visited Earth as a guest of honor. He stood before a great gathering of humans and aliens alike. He bowed deeply, a rare gesture among his kind, and spoke. Humanity has taught us a lesson that we will never forget. Kindness is strength. Love is power. And those who protect the innocent are the greatest warriors of all. The crowd cheered loudly. Children ran through the parks, laughing freely under the bright blue skies of Earth. Safe, protected, home, and, in the endless black of space, the stars watched silently. They had seen the fury of humanity. They had seen the love of humanity, and they would never forget. Because now, the galaxy knew. Harming humanity's children meant facing the unstoppable fury of Earth, and no one, no matter how powerful, would ever be foolish enough to make that mistake again. The stars above Earth were bright and peaceful, shining like tiny promises in the night sky. It was hard to believe that only weeks ago warships had rushed into space to rescue human children. Now, those same ships floated silently above Earth, like loyal guardians. The galaxy had changed, and everyone knew it. Across alien worlds, people spoke about the humans with a new respect, not because of fear alone, but because they had witnessed something rare and powerful, a people willing to move the heavens themselves to protect their young. Stories spread quickly. In the great libraries of the Alvari species, songs were written about the Earth's heart. In the marketplaces of the Trexar worlds, traders spoke in hushed voices about how humans destroyed entire fleets without a single warning. Even the cold and logical Terran scientists admitted, humans act with terrifying efficiency when driven by love. For the first time in history, Earth was not seen as a minor world. Earth was a symbol, a power, a reminder. Commander Vexar returned to his homeworld after visiting Earth. He stood before the Council of Elders and spoke with great care. "We were wrong," Vexar said. "We thought the humans were new, untested, but they are made of something, ancient and unbreakable. They are a people who do not fight for riches or pride. They fight for family, and there is no force stronger in the galaxy." The elders listened carefully. They decided to rewrite their history books. From that day forward, a new lesson would be taught to every young student. Respect the humans, respect their kindness, and never ever threaten their children. Meanwhile, Captain Ellis stood at a ceremony on Earth's moon. This event was different from the grand celebrations. It was quiet, personal, private. The soldiers who had risked their lives to rescue the children were honored here, not with loud parades, but with simple, honest words. Each soldier was given a single badge. On it were the words, "Protector of Innocence." Captain Ellis pinned the badge on each Marine herself. She looked into their eyes, saw their quiet pride, and said only 2 words, "Thank you." No other words were needed. They had done the impossible. And they had done it for the most important reason of all. Love. Across Earth, the children who had been rescued slowly returned to their lives. Some had nightmares at first. Some woke up crying, afraid they were still prisoners, but over time, with the care of their families and the support of their communities, they healed, they grew stronger, and they never forgot the soldiers who came for them, the protectors who didn't hesitate, the heroes who moved faster than fear. Many of those children would grow up to join Earth's defense forces, inspired by the bravery they had witnessed. The next generation would be even stronger, even braver, even more determined to protect what mattered most. One evening, as the sun set over the calm oceans of Earth, Captain Ellis sat with a group of the rescued children by a campfire. They laughed, played, and roasted sweet treats over the fire. One little boy asked her, "Captain, were you scared?" Ellis smiled gently. "Yes," she said. "Every one of us was scared, but love is stronger than fear." The children listened carefully. Their young faces were serious. Another girl asked, "Will you always come if we need you?" Captain Ellis didn't hesitate. "Always," she promised. "As long as there are humans among the stars, you will never be alone." The children smiled, comforted. The stars above twinkled like 1,000 silent promises, and somewhere across the galaxy, others watched and remembered the lesson they had learned. Humanity might seem small compared to the vastness of space, but their hearts were bigger than any empire. Their courage was stronger than any weapon. Their love was fiercer than any fleet, and that made them unstoppable. As the months passed, Earth's influence grew, but not through fear, through respect, through alliances, through friendship. Human scientists shared medicine that cured rare alien diseases. Human engineers helped rebuild damaged worlds. Human teachers taught alien children about Earth's long history of struggle, hope, and resilience. In return, humanity learned from the stars. They learned new ways of farming, building, and living among the planets. Together, they built something greater than any one world could build alone. A true galactic community, where love, not fear, was the strongest force. Commander Vexar often told a story to young cadets in his academy. He would stand tall, his voice calm and deep, and say, "Never underestimate the humans, not because of their weapons, not because of their numbers, but because they will fight harder for a single child than an empire will fight for a crown." And every cadet who heard, those words carried them into the stars. The stars had changed. The galaxy had changed. But most of all, humanity had changed too. They no longer saw themselves as the newcomers. They were defenders, builders, protectors. The children of Earth looked up at the night sky with dreams not of fear but of hope, because they knew they were not alone. They were part of something greater, and nothing in the universe would ever tear them apart again.